Everybody, welcome to Freedom Talk. I'm really pleased to welcome Boone Cutler. He's co-author of 5GW with General Mike Flynn. And Boone, you've got another book coming out. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, brother. Hey, thanks for having me on the show, and thanks for being so supportive of everything that we've got going on right now. It's a big deal, and there's so many people out there that just aren't getting enough information. And so the fact that you're putting this kind of information out definitely puts you on the winning team, man. I just appreciate you for doing that.
Glad to do it, Boone. And we're going to talk a bit about this 5GW. I want to bring in unrestricted warfare. You know that concept.
Right.
And as a citizen, I've been drawn into this. I've actually been drawn into a very real war that most people don't see. So I want to start, though, Boone, because we're doing a fathering series. And as you know, I'm talking with the military rapper, Raymond Lott, and we're going to benefit the Spartan sword. And I'm going to ask you a little bit about that too.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, I think the Marine Rapper is a great guy. I've known Ray for a while now. We've hung out. He's a good
Cool.
dude. So it's all family there. It's all family.
So, Boone, tell us how you got involved with General Mike Flynn and what led to this book, and tell us a little bit about your sequel coming up.
Well, it was kind of a meeting of the minds. I had known of General Flynn when I was in Iraq. You know, he was with JSOC, and I fell under JSOC with my job at the time, and so it was one of those things where you just knew the guy's name because he was the boss.
Yeah.
And then later on in life, we both through our own different paths. He was doing a lot of stuff politically, and I was doing stuff in the veteran space as an advocate, and he was doing stuff. Then he started doing speaking engagements, and I was continuing to speak engagements for the veteran community. And then just by happenstance, we ended up in the same hallway at the same time, talking about the same stuff. And it's just it was very apparent, and took a little bit of good reasoning among ourselves on how we're going to resolve the issue, because the issue just seemed to be, it doesn't matter who it was out there in America or for the world for that matter. People just felt like they were being tricked. They feel like they were being manipulated, and everything was just fake. And it didn't matter if we were talking about these are the words of people. These are real instances when I give these examples. A gay black female in Chicago who's a liberal is saying the same exact thing as some corn-fed white boy who's a conservative in Alabama. When you have groups like that who usually aren't crossing paths in the normal parlance of life or being online, but they're feeling the same way, it means that there's something going on, and it's something bigger than what people are looking at. And I think their feelings are right, because they're the same feelings I have. They're the same feelings that the people in my family have. I'm sure it's the same feelings you have. And then so we started breaking that down. We started looking at hybrid warfare, irregular warfare, and unrestricted warfare, and then you kind of slam them all together. And this point in time, with the technology that is currently used, and that technology becomes a weapon of war. We like to say that everything is weaponized until something better can be weaponized.
Yeah.
And the thing that is weaponized now is manipulation through online sources, and through the use of artificial intelligence, and how people are siloed into these feedback loops and these filter bubbles and echo chambers. And this is all part of a big manipulation, and it's designed for us to kind of focus on each other and focus on dislike for each other, rather than really looking at where the problems lie. And that comes from this creation of this new world order, which is basically headed up primarily by the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, this is a quote from a book you're familiar with, Unrestricted Warfare, which was written by two Chinese colonels, and it's the playbook of the Chinese Communist Party. And my best understanding, Boone, is that there are a lot of players, the World Economic Forum and others, but I think some of those players looked at what the Chinese Communist Party is doing and said, hey, we like this model. So I want to read this quote straight from the
Well,
book.
it's more than that, and I appreciate you bringing it up because yes, the World Economic Forum is involved, Bill Gates is involved, Zuckerberg involved, the whole, all the big tech people, the non-state, non-government agencies or organizations are involved, state, non-state actors,
Mm-hmm.
they're all involved. But who's the ringleader? Because if you look at the CCP, yes, the World Economic Forum is absolutely involved, but that's just the contingent of the CCP to get basically white countries under control because they put a different face on it. That's the key communicator that they're using to get bigger groups in control. And so when the World Economic Forum pulls people in, they have overlapping goals with the CCP, and the CCP has that type of control. And has that type of control over the tech side, over the World Economic Forum, over non-state actors. And then together, and this is what we really break down in session one, and people, I don't want to give away the farm here. I want people to read the entire thing because it takes that long to understand it. We really need to get away from expecting memes to teach us, expecting podcasts to teach us. We need to start studying again. We need to get deep into the read and understand the mechanisms at play. So it's not something that can be done or even explained thoroughly in some sort of podcast, especially when somebody takes your podcast, they take one little clip and then everybody thinks that they know everything because they saw a 15-second clip. No, we've got to do some real training now. We are at war. You wouldn't send your military to war and train them with memes. You would actually do real training with them. And we are at war right now, and we need to take training very, very seriously.
Yeah, for sure. And, I was on the front lines because I was publicly arrested September 15th of 2020, first of two arrests. And the government came after us for having a business for doing events to back the blue and that sort of thing. And I had to learn very, very quickly. And I had an inkling. I saw what happened with COVID, and I understood a lot of the deception there. I have a scientific background among other things, but I've had to learn. And I have to say this guide's been very useful for me. I wanted to read this for our podcast listeners quickly. This segment from Unrestricted Warfare, which I think gets to the heart of what you're talking about, with the progressive breaking down of the distinction between military technology and civilian technology, and between the professional soldier and the non-professional warrior, the battle space will overlap more and more with the non-battle space, serving also to make the line between these two entities less and less clear. Fields that were formerly isolated from each other are being connected. Mankind is endowing virtually every space with battlefield significance. All that is needed is the ability to launch an attack in a certain space using certain means in order to achieve a certain goal. Thus, the battlefield is omnipresent. Just think, if it's even possible to start a war in a computer room or a stock exchange that will send an enemy country to its doom, then there is non-battle space anywhere. If the young lad setting out with his orders should ask today, where is the battlefield? The answer would be everywhere. And indeed, our family we started getting death threats because we were falsely portrayed as if our business was non-compliant with the ridiculous COVID resolution, and it wasn't. We had passed our inspection, but I got letters in the mail saying I'm going to come in the dead of night when you're not expecting me, and it won't be soon. It'll be when you've forgotten about this, and I'm going to rape your wife and murder your kids in front of me. And so I actually had some former veterans, law enforcement officials step up and say, we'll come watch your house. I had like a volunteer security detail for a while. So this is a war. It's online. We had trolls going after us, and we had counter trolls come in, which I'm convinced was digital warriors, people who are part of a counterinsurgency. So I do believe, Boone, that there is a counterinsurgency going on. I think it operates in the shadows, but I have to say, I mean, your experience is in this realm. Are we fighting back? Do we have skilled people who are fighting back?
we have people that have a big heart. We really do. We have people that have a big heart and who work very hard and really care about the mission. This is true. Do we have enough of them that are trained properly? That's not that's where we're deficient. We're inadequate, and we're inadequate there worldwide because this isn't something that's just affecting the United States. That book that you're holding there in your hand, if you show people the back of it, that's where we're focusing. This is humanity's fight against globalism.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about the freedom loving people around the world.
Yeah.
And we've all got to get trained because, yes, we do outnumber this globalist contingent. And the more that we allow things to happen, it's the equivalent of getting on the train. You know what I'm saying? And we don't want to get on the train because it's going to take us to a bad place. A 15-minute city, that's just a modern day concentration camp. These are the ghettos. This is what you turn into, ghettos. And we don't want to be there. We don't want to get that much control. It's like being taken captive. When is your best chance to evade your capture? It's when you're being captured. It's not after you're already locked up and they have total control of you. And so they don't have total control just yet, but they're working towards that. And if we don't take every opportunity that we have while we still have an element of control with each other, then we're going to fail. We're going to end up getting on the rail cars, and we're going to places that we don't want to go to. Now, I'm talking about this, metaphorically, but it's the same thing. It's things that have happened in the past. They do repeat themselves, and there are absolutely groups out there that want to control the world and control its populace and control the population and to put people at work in certain ways to make money for other people. And I think people know this. I think they intuitively know this, but they don't intuitively know how to handle it. And when people are confused and scared, they usually do nothing. That's what human beings do when they're confused and scared. They do nothing. So we have to remove the confusion. And by removing the confusion, then we're able to intellectualize the situation. Once we intellectualize the situation, then we're no longer afraid and we can take action. So these are the things that need to happen right now. First comes the continuity of message, then comes continuity of action because people are no longer afraid or confused. And that's what these books do. We've written 2 sessions right now, General Flynn and I. The first one is Intro to 5GW, and the second one is How to Fight Artificial Intelligence, because artificial intelligence is a weapon. It is a weapon system that they're currently using to get control of everybody. And there's no way I could explain all that to you in less than 50,000 words. So people are really going to have to read up on that, understand it. And I'll warn everybody, once they get into that book, it's not about robots. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about AI-driven psychological programming. And that's a little bit heftier. That's a little bit stronger. That's a little bit more effective than psychological operations. Psychological programming goes to the heart of everything. And right now, there are psychological programming operations happening with your children, with your parents, with your neighbors, with you. And people just don't see it. They don't recognize it. And it's because of that and being in front of these screens and not understanding the technology behind these screens. We're really here to fall victim to it all. We need to get smart on it. We need to get educated on it and realize that there really is a plan for all this stuff. Like, we have a plan. We wrote a comprehensive plan on how to fight artificial intelligence inside session 2. And in session 1, we wrote a comprehensive plan on how to start taking control back inside your country to maintain your own sovereignty. So it's not about, a lot of people like to just put that fear bait out there all the time. We don't like that fear bait. We want to empower people. And that's what these military style manuals written for civilians is all about.
Yeah, and I have to say that's so helpful. And I know I wrote a paper some time ago. And by the way, I was working for a national medical publication as editor-in-chief. And from 2019, when I was getting information that other people didn't have straight out of China, and I saw what was happening, and I've been desperate to wake people up since then and let people know you are the soldiers of today. You're on the battlefield, whether you know it or not. So one question. Oh, and by the way, this book I think is great too. And the Epic Times special, the Final War, to show you what China's doing, to show you what the CCP is doing. But one thing I want to ask you, Boone, is a lot of us have experienced, we want to wake people up. We're almost desperate to wake people up. And in that
Right.
paper, How to Murder Millions, I talk about how in some scenarios, like say the Warsaw Ghetto, there were people who understood and they were trying to get people to rise up and confront this evil. And people had, like Solzhenitsyn says, 1,000 glib little reasons for not getting involved. But how do we wake people up without them thinking we're crazy conspiracy theorists?
Well, I think well, there's definitely techniques for recruitment, right? That's what we're talking about. When we talk about waking people up, we're talking about recruitment. And I think there's techniques for recruitment. There's a lot of those techniques are written, inside of session two. We talk about collecting human intelligence. There's a way to recruit in there. And I think it's a, it's a good thing to look at. I think in session one, chapter 8, we talk about building reliability networks, which I think is the most important thing we can do right now. And it's something that's really at everybody's fingertips because, if you've got these reliability networks set up in different places, well, then all you have to do is start connecting them. But the first thing you have to do is you have to build your local reliability network. And that's based upon people within a 10-minute car drive of your home, because at some point in time, if there is scarcity, you want to make sure that you have access to your group. They can't be, on the internet, parsed out all across the world and country, because then you don't have access. You can't maintain control within what we call the physical domain. It's in cyberspace.
Yeah.
And the digital platform, cyberspace, is owned by your adversary. So you really can't do a lot of building there. I mean, it's good for getting messaging out. It's good for, being able to encourage each other or good things like that. But when it comes down to actually doing the work on the ground, it has to be through reliability networks that you build with people that are close and local to you. And you're going to have to get out of your air conditioning. You're going to have to, maybe go have some coffee at a local coffee shop with some folks and start discussing things and getting a plan together. But all that stuff is, like I said, more than we can lay out here. There's a manual for that, per se, and that's the Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare in session 1 and in session 2. But primarily the stuff that you're talking about is chapter 8 in session 1, and is in the human intelligence collection portion of session 2.
And what's the best place, Boone, for people to purchase these books? And by the way, if you're watching or listening, go out and get these books. They're essential for helping our nation, helping us take back our country.
Yeah, just go out. You can buy them wherever books are sold online, or you can go to generalflynn.com. I think that's always a good thing to do. Go to generalflynn.com. You can purchase the books directly from there. And even if you want autographed books by General Flynn, you can get them at his website, generalflynn.com.
Yeah, fantastic. And, Boone, one thing that concerns me is I hear even people high up in the military, discrediting China's military, saying, look, they don't have the Navy that we have. And yet I find that they're waging a different kind of warfare, and this is from unrestricted warfare. The era of strong and brave soldiers who are heroic defenders of the nation has already passed. In a world where even nuclear warfare will perhaps become obsolete military jargon, it is likely that a pasty-faced scholar wearing thick eyeglasses is better suited to be a modern soldier than is a strong young lowbrow with bulging biceps. That's their words, not mine. I have immense respect for soldiers, but
see those racists coming after me for my lowbrow. Yeah, this is a thing. People need to understand that the nature of war changes over time. That's why we have generations of war. The first generation of war was pre-gunpowder, and then the second generation of war is after gunpowder. And then with each generation of technology, the same as we have generations of people, whether it be boomers or Gen Xers or Gen Z or whatever, war is the same way. And right now we are in the 5th generation of war. In this generation of war, we're talking about economic warfare. We're talking about political warfare. We're talking about manipulation, propaganda. There's a lot of things that go into it. Cyber warfare. There's so much that they rely on artificial intelligence for. And again, it's really, really not about robots. It's about how these machines control the information that you see. And that information attaches to the emotions, and you lose your critical thinking skills. And the next thing you know, you're acting in a way that you probably really don't want to. If you had more options and saw it for what it was worth, you'd put it where it belongs, which is someplace else, because we're not each other's enemy. And these things are really pushing us to believe that we are each other's enemy. And that's false. That's a false narrative. And there's a lot of people out there pushing false narratives for one reason or the other. But the truth of the matter is, the truth is inside session one and session two, and it's not political. This is all about doctrine and technique. Doctrine and technique. There's no politics in there at all. But it definitely lays out who the issue that we have is with, and how they are operating. Because you want to know how your enemy operates, and that's what these books do.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the main reasons why I founded Freedom Talk was just to, and my original tagline was think again or think again. And just to get people thinking, to get them to interact with the world, to see these strategies and to say, look, you know, Boone, most people I encounter, black, white, Hispanic, you name it, we all have kids. We have more in common than we have different. So I sometimes wonder how much of what we see online is actually how the populace is and how much of it is propaganda. How much are we being fed this division? I think there's a lot of that. But you know, to your point about people of different appearances and backgrounds getting together, I had a black lesbian couple come from Chaz or Chop in Seattle and come visit our coffee shop down in Tucson when we had it, and they were talking to a guy who he wasn't, but he looked like he could have been the poster child for the Aryan Nations. I mean, bald, muscular, tattoos. And I'm looking at these two groups saying they found something in common. These two ladies, wonderful ladies, they figured out and realized, hey, this isn't about helping black people. This is about Marxism. There's a terribly violent message here, and they experienced that chaotic environment, and it didn't suit them well. So, you know, how much is actually division and how much is fed to us to give that illusion, do you think?
I think that here's the real facts. You know, when you see this Marxist, this globalist agenda, when it's being pushed through the news or any other type of messaging, it's focusing on 51% of the most socialist Democrats. 51% of the most socialist Democrats. So that means 49% Democrats and Republicans kind of believe the same thing. You know, they want to argue over 17% tax versus 12% tax, the same kind of stuff we did back in the 80s and the 90s. But they're not globalists. They're not Marxists. That's not where it's coming from. So we've got to get away from this paradigm where we want to argue left and right, Republican, Democrat. That's really not what the argument is anymore. And that's why we discuss what is a vanguard party and what is the modern day vanguard party, which is the uniparty that's in session one. We discuss that very intensely to get people to understand that we've got to get on the right paradigm, because we can start. I mean, it's like we can start arguing Republican, Democrat all day long. That's really not where the fight lies. It's between the uniparty and those who believe in their country, because the uniparty are those people that are pushing the globalist agenda, and they're on the right and they're on the left equally. So it's about identifying them. I mean, they do it knowingly and unknowingly. A vanguard party is a revolutionary party. This is modern, you know, as recent as Lenin. This is how he did things, and it's happening here. You basically consume both parties into one uniparty, then you take over the government, and that one uniparty becomes the controlling factor. And then we lose the ability to have, you know, sides that parlay for different rights and for different people. You know, it becomes Unitarian at that point. So all this stuff is not new. This is history, and it's interesting. I talked to this young person recently, has a degree in political science, and we were talking about Mao and Stalin. And he says to me, he goes, you know what? We got very, very little Mao and Stalin teaching, even as a political science major. Everything we talked about that was demonized was Nazi, Hitler, Hitler, Nazi, Nazi, Hitler, Hitler, Nazi. Nobody ever talked to us really in depth about Mao or Stalin or about Marxism and how all that plays into things. They're just not getting the education. So as we're talking about these things, as the common person is talking about these things, realize that the young people out there are really getting a different education than the rest of us have. And that's to keep all these things not demonized, so they can push them forward. They're actually selling it. You know, you see the colleges doing that. They're selling Marxism. Yeah. So they're not gonna stand up against Mao or Stalin, but they're definitely gonna, you know, everything Nazi is bad, 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 which it is. But, you know, that doesn't mean there's not other bad things out there too, like Maoists, like Stalinists, like Lenin, and all the things that have happened in history. I mean, Mao murdered more human beings on the planet than any human being ever has. And
Yeah.
it seems like these facts are missing from the current conversations that people are having.
And Stalin wasn't far behind. Stalin and Mao, as you know, they made Hitler's murderous regime look like child play by comparison. And the fascists, I believe they're still around today. They would love for us to focus on them. I mean, I should say the communists would love for us to focus on the fascists. But I was about to echo that point before you made it, that none of this is new. You call it progressivism. It's not progressive. It's going back to what our people fought their way out of, which is the elites, the rich, controlling everyone else, controlling the poor. And, it's interesting because in Brigadier General Robert Spalding's book, War Without Rules, citing again unrestricted warfare by the Chinese, he emphasizes their goal is to control, not kill. And I truly believe the CCP would not want to go head to head with us militarily. They're willing to do it, but that's their last resort. What they'd like to do is control us, and they've been very good at that. They've got these Confucius institutes at our universities. It's coming out in the news that over 500 public schools, they've found that they've infiltrated. They're in our politics, they're in our finances, and that's why I say, Boone, when people downplay the threat from the Chinese, the threat by the military, I think they're looking at the wrong target, because they're already so far down that path with us. And you see how people are thinking. I mean, on my social media all the time, I have these neo-communists coming on and trying to say how wonderful socialism and Marxism are. How great is this threat?
Oh, I think it's enormous. But again, I think it's 51% of the most socialist Democrats. The rest, we are the majority audience. We just don't know it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. They use something called astroturfing. And that's like, okay, you have a grassroots movement, and that's organic, it's grassroots, and it grows. Well, they do something called astroturfing. And again, this is doctrine and technique. We talk a lot about it. And it's basically where you have a fake grassroots movement, and then you promote it with propaganda so it looks like it's larger than what it is. And then people think that that's the majority audience. And then you have these rules of social conformity that really become weaponized. And rules of social conformity basically means, okay, if there are 10 people in a room and 8 people are doing a certain thing, 2 people are just going to go along to get along. Okay, these are rules of social conformity. So if they make it look like the majority of people are wanting this socialism, wanting this Marxism, well, then there's a certain amount of people that are just going to get along to go along. But the truth of the matter is, that's not the grassroots movement that is real. It is astroturfing. It is fake. It is a faux movement. And right now they want to make that faux movement reality. So they say it again, and make sure that they said it. Meanwhile, the rest of us out here are going, wait a minute, this is all a bunch of nonsense, and then we have to constantly prove our case, in the negative space, because here we are disagreeing with something instead of taking the offensive position, which is what we should be doing. We should absolutely be taking the offensive position and putting them on the defense right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we can do that. All these things are possible. All these things are possible, but we have to dominate the physical domain, because that's where we can't be controlled by these machines. When we're talking to someone at a coffee shop or at a restaurant or at a church or at a mosque or at the temple, this is the physical domain. We're not being censored. We actually are being human with humans, and all these ideas start to come out. And then you get a plan, and you execute that plan. But this is where we're really at. And again, there's no way on any one podcast we can get all this information to people's brains. We can only say that we are absolutely at war. It is going to continue. And if you want to win, you have to get trained. You have to remove your analysis paralysis and actually get involved in things. And we can do that. We can all do that. But it won't be all of us that does it. Routinely, we need about 15% who are willing to jump in with both feet, and then we need 3% who are willing to do a little more. But this is the way things happen. These are the numbers, and I think we're there. And I think they're scared to death of us. And I think the next general election in the United States I think when you have the largest turnout of people volunteering to work in the polls who are ready to blow whistles at any given at the at the drop of a hat, I think that's going to be hugely important. And I think also get people getting over their desire to become just complacent. And what we're saying right now is on voting day, show up on voting day in person,
Yes.
in
Yeah.
mass as an act of protest. You show up in mass, the entire country in mass as an act of protest, if nothing else, and make sure we got plenty of people stocked inside the polls who can blow whistles at the drop of a hat. That's what really, really needs to get focused on immediately.
What I'm seeing, Boone, is that there are people who hide their heads in the sand. Like you said, they go along to get along. They don't want to risk their reputation, their job, whatever it may be. I'm one of those people who's all in. I've lost a job. You name it. I've gone through it. And like I said, in 2020, I was arrested publicly. Didn't expect it. Never, no criminal record, nothing. I felt very alone, but I'm really encouraged because at that time I realized we got to start making connections around the country. I connected with Ian Smith out there in New Jersey. I know he's part of the Reawaken tour. I saw, we had some similar experiences, and I started linking up with people all over the country. But I did make that decision. I'll give up to my life for my country, because if people could run into machine gun fire for my freedom, I can say no to a damn mask, and I can stand up to these petty bureaucrats, and that's why they've arrested me twice, because they don't like that I've spoken, and that's all I've done is spoken. I've never gotten violence. One thing I want to cover with you, maybe in a later session, is whether or not it's a mistake to get violent, because I see these people who are afraid. One guy literally this weekend said, "It makes me want to hide under a rock." You can't hide from it. But then you have other people saying, "Well, we need to form militias and go out and do that." I tend to think either one is a mistake. But
No, that's now violence is not the right answer. We're not there. A lot of people have watched, what is that movie, Red Dawn, a few too many times,
Yeah.
But that's their frame of reference, and I understand that. But that's not where we're at. If you want to study something, study the French Resistance and how they used networks to relay information, and how they helped each other and promoted a sense of unity within their communities against their captors.
Absolutely.
That's
Polish
where
underground.
yeah, that's where we're really at. We're not talking about blowing up trains and all that stuff. We're just talking about building that sense of community that people can rely on each other. And again, being human in the physical domain again is a huge impact. And you were talking about the people there. One last thing, you're talking about the people who just want to bury their heads in the sand. Well, pain is personal. It really is. Pain is personal. And at some point in time, we're all going to feel that pain. Right now, a few people are, but at some point in time, everybody will. So you got to ask yourself, are you going to wait for that pain to come to you? And then you're going to be behind the power curve and you're going to be in defense, or you're going to get offensive so you can avoid that pain, because the pain is definitely coming and pain is personal. And I think everybody feels that happening. It's just a matter of you got to make the decision. And the first thing you got to do is get trained, remove the confusion, and remove that sense of fear.
Yeah.
And once that happens, then you can move forward. But until then, if you can't intellectualize it, you're just going to be paralyzed. And we don't want you to be paralyzed anymore.
Can you tell us just briefly about, kind of put it in a nutshell, what Spartan Sword is?
Spartan Sword is an organization. It's a 501c3 that focuses on ending suicide within the veteran community, within the active duty military community, and within the first responder community. And there's a campaign that we revolve around. It's called the Spartan Pledge. And I travel the country with other great people who volunteer for the organization, and we do Spartan Pledge ceremonies. And we take this sword that has been crafted from the World Trade Center steel, and it's been crafted into a Spartan sword. It's the only one of its kind, and it's the only Spartan sword out there that we use. And we travel around the country and inspires a lot of people. And it's a way for people to just be people and understand that you got to have a couple things to always survive in those communities. Those communities are important, and we need to save those communities. And right now they've been through a lot. They've been through decades of war, been through the defund the police, programs and all that stuff. And so if there's a time to stand up for the people that have been standing up for us, we're not talking about the government. We're talking about the rank and file folks who are there, who have taken the hits. this is the thing that you support. You support SpartanSword.org, and we get help out there to people so they can become empowered and help themselves.
Well, Boone, I can't thank you enough, first of all, for serving our country overseas, for continuing to serve, but also for being involved in Spartan Sword. I believe you're president of the board. Is that right?
Yeah, they call me something, but yeah.
But I'm not a veteran. I like to say one day I'll be a veteran of 5GW, but I have experienced really debilitating anxiety. I've wrestled with depression. I'm glad to say I've overcome it to a large extent. It can always be there. My mother committed suicide when I was 10, so I do feel a real kinship, and I'm just really glad and honored to be a part of this. So thank you for everything you're doing, Boone. It's an honor and a privilege to know you, and I look forward to talking to you again on Freedom Talk.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Thanks for having me on. I'll come back anytime.
You bet. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon. Hey everybody, Freedom Talk is proud to support our friend Arizona Sheriff Mark Lamb in his campaign for the U.S. Senate. Please click on the link in the description and donate now. And here's a plus. Part of your donation will be matched to help support our hard work here at Freedom Talk. We really appreciate you, and we appreciate your support as we teach America to think like a patriot.